You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And I want to thank everybody for all their support, as I do on every show. Our listeners are growing each and every day, and it's because of you. Many of you, we don't do any really advertising at all on the show. You're listening to shows, sharing our podcasts or individual podcasts or the entire show with friends, family, and can't thank you enough. And I know why you do. I know why you're sharing it, because we have great information. We have wonderful guests, very knowledgeable, and I'm not going to disappoint you today, because today we have with us Walt Kasmir, who is a Ph.D., has his Ph.D., and is a gerontologist and behavioral expert who lectures, trains, and consults throughout the continental United States, Africa, and the UK on grief, eldercare, and resilience. Dr. Kasmir developed expertise from over 25 years of clinical experience, including hospice, psychiatry, and case management. He's helped thousands face end-of-life issues with dignity and grace. Dr. Kasmir is a fellow of American Academy of Grief Counseling and a certified spiritual life coach. He's known as the Neuro-Maestro, which we're going to learn more about because of his Theo-centric Neurophilosophy and his ability to transform clients' lives using a transpersonal blend of philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and psychology. So Dr. Kasmir, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me, Frank. I'm glad that you provide this additional service. The primary service of senior authority in itself is an awesome service. People probably take that for granted, but that's how I met Mike Mannion, who introduced us. And
Right.
A lot of your listeners don't really have a clue as to how many different types of resources are available.
Yeah, and you're another resource. So we're thrilled to have you on. Yeah.
Kudos to you, and thank you again for having me. So the tagline Neuro-Maestro.
Tell me about that.
My wife is a musician.
Okay.
I have helped her with her music school since 2000. She was in the classroom, and if you know anything about public education, they're constantly cutting the budget. And arts is one of the first victims of budgetary constraints. So in 2000, I helped her launch her own music school here in the Charlotte area. And so that's, being married to an artsy person for going on 30 years, I've learned a lot of musical theory and so forth by osmosis.
Right.
And so my background, part of my main background is philosophy, neuroscience, and psychology. So to try to come up with something that didn't sound so nerdy, I came up with the Neuro-Maestro, and the implication being that together, my clients and I can compose a life that they desire and deserve.
Yeah.
So
right.
Just a play on words in my experience, but I really have to have multiple hats on when I'm working with clients. Even when I was in hospice, I had to work with the families mostly because a lot of times the oncologists really made the hospice referral, in my opinion, too late. Gotcha. So I didn't get to work a lot with the clients on the emotional level. I mainly went, and my role was to help them with meds, but I really worked with the families. And that was the the impetus for me to go back and get certified in grief. And I was always a lifelong student. But when I got into hospice, I really realized that I really needed even more skills and training than they provided. So I went back, I got certified in grief counseling and became a life coach and other things. But I used all of those soft skills, as they say in the business world, to work with the families of the patients, because most of them have not gone through acute grief before or chronic grief.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it's got to be at the top of the list of stressors. There used to be a list out, and it had like the top 10 most stressful things. And it had marriage and getting fired and getting hired and moving. But if they revamp that list, caring for an adult, caring for an aging parent, and dealing with grief have to be in the top 10 and I think they've got to have bumped out a couple things.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk, as we move on to our discussion today, we're going to talk more about grief, but you also do what you call elder care coaching work. Tell us a little bit more about that. What does that entail? What are the types of clients you're working with?
I'm glad you zeroed in on that. That is the flagship service that I provide, and that is where my core skills, knowledge base, and calling really are. As I alluded to earlier, dealing with an aging parent is stressful on multiple levels. And what I found out, what I encountered over and over was, in the medical industry, they really, they exalt the brain. They exalt the, being logical and rational and being this aloof, distant clinician. But that's not what people need. They expect technical competence. But what I thought they really were missing was people that had that emotional intelligence, as Daniel has coined it recently, and to be able to tap in and understand those emotional, psychological, and even spiritual needs that the family have that really make their experience better. So that really became my mission, is helping the families cope in a challenging situation.
Gotcha. So, I'm sure you experience this like we do at our organization, where people learn about you and they go, wow, I didn't even know this type of a counseling or service existed. I wish I would have met you a couple of years ago. Do you hear that quite often?
Yes, and I must admit I have a lot of homework to do to refine my message, to get my elevator speech together, so to say, to be able to quickly tell people exactly what it is. But yeah, a lot of people, they're on that success treadmill, and they're just going. They have their blinders on, and all they're focusing on is their career. And then all of a sudden they get that call from the hospital. Hey, guess what? On Thursday, your mother's getting discharged, and now you're going to be a caregiver.
Right. So I was going to just get to that. I know that elder care coaching, elder care consulting is a pretty generic term, and that could fall into a lot of different categories. Give us maybe, help our listeners understand maybe just some examples. You gave one, all right?
Okay.
Right there.
Okay.
So
sure.
give us some examples, the type of people that are contacting you, and examples of the type of work that you do. I think will help
Okay.
people understand it a little better.
So let me try to paint a picture of the typical person that would benefit from my help. Basically, your audience, your clients, the people in the what we all call the sandwich generation.
Right, right.
Usually a female in her from 45 to 60 who has her career, she has her own family, and she is either taking care of a parent or coordinating the care of a parent, and which is multiple levels of stress. So they're sandwiched in between dealing with their own family and caring for mom or coordinating mom's care. And it's a pressure cooker. There's a lot of research out there that documents that people who don't engage in wellness, who don't have an elder care coach to keep them grounded and help them manage the stress during that, a lot of them end up ill themselves. And I mean, not just a cold, but I mean heart disease, ulcers, cancer, shortly after being a caregiver. Caregiver stress is well documented in research. So I help people, number one, manage the stress while they are being a caregiver. I help them tap into community resources like senior authority that can help them find living situations that will meet their needs. Coordination of having care come to them if they're aging at home, another popular buzzword, basically when people want to stay at home or in the community and have resources come to them. I help them navigate the resources and systems. I have a network of various peripheral professionals, for instance, estate attorneys, custody attorneys, financial planners, insurance people, any additional service that I can put them in contact with that I've already vetted, because people are working 50, 60 hours a week. They don't have time to go out and vet the various resources, find out about the resources in the first place. And then one of the things that I think is very valuable, but people don't even know that they need it, is the advocacy role. For instance, if they are constantly taking their parent to the doctor, and let's say they're an accountant, they're not a clinical person, they don't, most of the times, they don't even know which questions to ask. So I can be the intermediary. I can make sure that, number one, they are asking relevant questions, or if they arrange it to give me release of information, I can go with, if they're local, I can go with the parent to the doctor's appointment and actually be there and get questions answered, clear up things, probe into lines of the treatment and prognosis and so forth, and bring that information back pre-digested and deliver it to the family in plain English.
That's great. That's wonderful. Wonderful. So we're going to take a quick break. I promise. We're going to be back in just about 30 seconds, just to recognize our sponsor, and then I want you'll be able to share with our listeners how they could get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, and I know you've written books, so we'll talk about that, and then we'll get into people you help with the whole grieving process. So
okay, awesome.
All right. So do you know anybody who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is the Facilitated Self-Assessment Program for Older Drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a senior care authority advisor in your area. And we're back with Dr. Walt Kasmir, who is just an expert in a lot of areas and with elder issues. And so, Dr. Kasmir, tell us, I know you've written a book. I know you have a website that people could learn more about what you're doing. It's commercial time. Go for it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Actually, since we initially connected, I've published a second book.
Oh, great.
But the
Wonderful.
book that you are probably know about is my senior living notebook. That's a quick read. It's a notebook / checklist / journal. Its primary aim is to help the adult child of an aging parent, number one, go to a prospective facility and have a checklist to inspect and things to look for, signs of quality that I have accrued over the years and from various sources. And I actually have a checklist that they can go down the list. They can, it's a paperback or a hardcover. They can take it with them to the facilities, have the checklist out, and go down the list and make sure that at least the prospective facilities are meeting basic requirements that I think are critical. I go above and beyond. So if a facility meets my checklist, I would probably give them the green light. But what I really recommend people to do is talk to some of the staff.
Right.
At least observe the staff and see if they're happy or not.
Yep.
This is exactly what I did when I was working in case management. I had a list of resources, but I didn't just refer places. I went to the facilities and walked. I didn't announce myself. I went around and checked it out myself. I went to see if it was clean and there was they responded to people when they called and so forth. You really have to check a place out. And I know your service helps them do that up front, but that ultimately the family has to go check the place out. So that book will help them have a reference guide. And it also has some self-care entry journals about how to process the emotions of dealing with that. They can find that on Amazon. It's also a link on my website. Since then, I published Grace for Grieving Men. We try to be, we're taught to be macho in America, but most of the time when we're the strong, silent type, we just implode. So the Grace for Grieving Men is a brief journal type book that helps men, give them a safe place to be a human being, have emotions, process those emotions, and deal with grief and loss of many types in a modern style.
Great. That's wonderful. And your website, why don't you share with our listeners how they could go to your website and learn more about what you're doing? I'm sure you have the books there as well.
The books are on that link. But my website is Dr. Walt Kasmir, Dr. no period, Walt like Disney, KASMIR.com.
Great.
Just like Disney, I'm just short a few million.
Just a few, huh?
Just
All
a
right.
few million,
Just
but
a
they can
few.
reach me there. I'm on podcasts. Anywhere you
Yeah, you have
Google.
podcasts also. What's the name of your podcast?
I have two. Critical Conversations is kind of an umbrella where we talk about medical, legal, and financial issues in the gerontology space. So it kind of covers a variety of areas. Like if I had you on my podcast, you would fall in that category of resources. And Grace for Grieving, where I specifically invite guests on to process their grief a little bit and help others to normalize that roller coaster of emotions that most people feel and haven't really learned to process yet.
Gotcha. So, I want to like to zero in on an area of grief that I'm sure
Okay.
you deal with pretty regularly. Unfortunately, people always say to me, "How's business?" I say, "Unfortunately, really good." I mean, it's
Yeah.
just our it's just the way it is with the as people are aging. But grieving someone who has passed or about to pass is tough. But talk to us about how you're dealing with families who have a loved one with dementia, where they may have lost the person that they knew while they were alive, while they're still alive. And so it's kind of it's a double grieving process. So talk to us on what advice would you give to those who are going through it, maybe going through it soon? Talk to us a little more about that.
Frank, that's such an astute observation and excellent question. And at the core of my practice. And what you're referring to is what experts call anticipatory grief, where it's almost like we're trading places with our parents. We were vulnerable when we were born, and as children, they looked after us. They protected us from ourselves. And now in this situation, the roles have reversed, and now we are the guardian of the parent. And Alzheimer's in specific is particularly challenging. That's an understatement. Watching your parent gradually fade away before your eyes is probably one of the most grueling, torturous things that adults in the 20th century have had to encounter. Unfortunately, Alzheimer's, it usually takes a course of 5 to 7 years from the time that we see the onset of noticeable memory loss and decrease of function until they pass away. And this isn't just theory. I mean, I have experienced it. I've helped families and clients deal with this. And I'm currently an adult child of an aging parent. Both of my parents have Alzheimer's. One is more advanced than the other. So when you watch, and in the case of my dad, you watch your hero, who was once your hero, this vigorous male figure that protected you and took care of you, and now you got to guide them around and make sure that they don't fall down. And oh, my screensaver went out. I was like, what happened? But so now, and you almost feel helpless. Many people do. So my primary advice. I know people have a short attention span, so if they remember nothing else, is don't try to do this alone.
Yep, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
Do not try to do this alone. Accept help. Accept help from any viable source you can. A lot of people just have lip service, but and what unfortunately happens in a lot of cases is there's one primary caregiver, and that person is carrying the burden, the bulk of the burden, and they will soon burn out. And unfortunately, a lot of them will end up having various stress-related diseases. So one, acknowledge that it's stressful and recruit help, accept help. You can get help like an elder care coach who can help guide you along the way. You can reach out to community resources with the aging agencies in most counties. There's a plethora of resources, but don't do it alone. If you are in a church, you can reach out hopefully to your church leaders, other family members, but recruit help, accept help, and don't try to do this alone.
Wow, couldn't agree with you more. You said it well. So what, listen, we could talk about this particular subject matter for hours, but unfortunately, I only have a few minutes left. But if there's, what about, I know I talk to families, and I'll hear things like, well, I want to take my husband. He used to like going to the movies, but I take him to the movies and we walk out, and 5 minutes later, he doesn't even remember we went to the movies. So why am I taking him to the movies? And my response is, did he enjoy the moment? I mean, during that time, did he enjoy the moment?
Yeah.
Forget about that he doesn't remember it. Yeah, he seemed to enjoy himself. Actually, he was eating popcorn, and but then he doesn't even remember anything. Well, he enjoyed that moment. Well, give me your comments on that.
Oh, another excellent point, Frank. There's a renowned gerontologist by the name of Dr. Kenneth Doka. He's a prolific writer, lecturer, teacher, etc., and among others, but he pops out. And what we have to try to remember is their personhood. We have to respect their personhood. That there's still a person who can love, who can laugh, who can enjoy life, who can develop friendships. That person is still in there, whether they can articulate that or not, whether they can give you a 5-paragraph essay to report about it later is inconsequential. As you said, if they enjoy the moment, you brought them a moment of peace, and that's significant.
Great. Hey, it was great having you, Dr. Walt Kasmir. That's Dr. Walt Kasmir, KASMIR.com. Check it out. Did I get it right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you. Really appreciate you joining us on Boomers Today. And I want to thank everybody out there for joining us. And again, keep the word out. Let your friends and family know. Please be safe out there.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.